I've All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us again for another session of the Future of Work for the Asian Youth webinar series. We held the very first session in late August this year, where we learned about the circumstances of Taiwan's young people who, despite being mostly digitally proficient, face challenges such as difficulty in finding first jobs, unreasonable work hours, lack of social protection, low wages, and the dilemma of taking atypical employment. Still, however, it is still laudable that efforts in legislation and social assistance, both from government and the private sector, are improving in Taiwan. But there still remains a lot of work to be done if Taiwan were to prevent the departure of young talent from leaving and going for better opportunities overseas. For today's session, we are focusing on Indonesia. Our activity for today is very straightforward. We will be, after my introductions, we will be having the first words from our partner with CAS, in CAS, and then it will be followed by our activity proper for the talks of our three esteemed speakers, which will be followed by a question and answer segment, and then closing and wrap up by our friends in CAS and the TAEF. Now, before going further with today's activity, I would like to call on Ms. Rabea Brower, CAS country representative to Japan, for her opening message. Rabea.
Thank you very much, Yuri, for the kind introduction. I am Rabea Brower from the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation. I am heading the CAS Japan program, just as well as the regional program of economic governance, under which umbrella we are meeting here today. Thank you very much, Yuri, for pulling this off and supporting our regional program so well. I'd like to thank your colleagues also for staging this webinar, just as well as my own colleague, Chris Perez, who you will be meeting later. I warmly welcome our distinguished speakers, Yogi Hasudyono and Dandi Rafitrandi and Samuel Nosamu. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm very, very much looking forward to your input. The future of work is, you all know it, a very widely stretched phrase, and we like to shed some light and do some research on a very particular angle of it, namely the youth. Future of work and the future of work for our youth is a pillar of our regional program of economic governance that I just mentioned. We present and work on all issues that are defining and are linked to to Asia's economic growth and Asia's economic destiny. And we try to present those lessons back to Europe and to Germany. CAS, by the way, the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation has 120 offices worldwide. We're very proud of that figure. We rank upon the top 10 think tanks and top 20 worldwide. And we are known for our events and research on social market economy, on our EU matters, on transatlantic relations. But we're also, of course, dealing with rule of law issues all over the world with democracy and regional security. The regional program I mentioned, SOPAS, out of the CAS portfolio, focuses on future of work, on womenomics and free trade and multilateralism, and under which I'm very proud to cooperate with TAEF. TAEF has been a very long-standing partner to CAS, and so has Taiwan, by the way, and we enjoy a very long-standing, fruitful friendship and cooperation. As Yuri already said, we are doing this study in more countries than only Indonesia. We looked at Taiwan a few months ago, and now today we are listening to our case studies from Indonesia. Next year we will look at Malaysia and Vietnam. And that program is in the very trusted hand of my colleague Chris and Yuri, so I'm very, very much looking forward to our case studies today. Why are we actually doing this? A very valid question. We all know that globalization, climate change, demographic challenges, technology advances are posing challenges on all of us, but more so on our youth, on the young people. We need to support our youth to see or to help them to see the opportunities in all of these pillars. And we want them to seize, for example, the technology advances, and we want them to seize the advantage that digitalization poses in their future being. We need to ask ourselves, is our youth in all the particular countries, not only in those really equipped for those future jobs that we may not even know, how do they feel, or differently asked, do they feel content with their education? Do they feel it enables them to participate in the future jobs? And what are we giving them to be the winners in the globalized world, right? We want them to succeed. And each of our case studies, each of our country studies has, or each of the countries that we're looking at, such as Indonesia, has a vibrant youth, of course, and that yearns for those chances. So with this seminar, we try to make sure that they find those chances that I was just talking about. And I look forward to your papers. I look forward to our discussions. And of course, all of this contributes to the much needed policy discussions that we want to hand out to our governments and to our policymakers, of course. So I would like to leave it with this, and again, warmly welcome and thank every one of you for helping us. I also want to send a warm welcome to our audience out there, to our live viewers on all of our social media channels. Do follow TIFE and do follow CUS, not just for this seminar, but also follow our activities. We have a lot to say. We have a lot of important things to say that you find out there. And Yuri, I would give back to you to moderate this. I'm sure it's going to be a really high level and super interesting event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rabea, for a very comprehensive introduction. So as Rabea mentioned, this is a partnership between two institutions, but by also inviting everyone from the various countries that we're working with right now, we hope to broaden that partnership. And we do believe that, yes, these countries that we are focusing on at the moment are very vibrant and have a lot of stories or cases or experiences that they can contribute to the overall discussion on the future of work. Now, Indonesia, moving into the Indonesian landscape, Indonesia is by far the world's largest archipelagic state, with over about 18,000 islands scattered over both sides of the equator, and whose population figures around 274 million people. That are scattered in just a mere 1/3 of the 18,000 islands that I mentioned a while ago. Now, the country's immense territory has blessed it with both economic opportunities as well as a bounty of challenges, both domestically and beyond its borders. And this can range from political to racial, etc. The country is home to diversity, with 633 recognized ethnic groups and some 700 languages and dialects. Indonesia is also the largest Muslim majority nation in the world. Roughly 87% of the population are Muslim, with Protestants, Catholics, Hindus figuring in smaller numbers. Even pre-COVID, since we are now in a pandemic state, even pre-COVID, Indonesia's unemployment rate has been conservatively rising, currently at 4.84%. Youth unemployment has gone up in recent years, now at 17.64%, which is 0.6% up from 2019. Other challenges that young people are facing are informality, which some of you may know. About 50% of Indonesians working are in the informal sector or in informal employment, Inactivity is one of them as well, and long-term unemployment is another issue. Of course, this is exacerbated by the perpetuation of the gender and urban-rural divide, with women and rural youth being more likely to be in informal employment, inactivity, or unemployed. There are also positive trends with more young people pursuing and staying in. However, there are also progress in a way, with more young people pursuing and staying longer in education. So this is partly due to government initiatives to support financially strapped youth, as in programs similar to Subsidi untuk Siswa Miskin, or subsidies for poor students, where qualified students receive subsidies for them to stay in school. Now, for us to move closer into the focused discussions for today, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Today's first speaker brings to the table his expertise in public service, which includes developing strategic planning for the Indonesian manufacturing sector and liaising with international development agencies on programs geared towards Indonesia's economic empowerment. A former member of Vision Indonesia 2045, an accomplished economist and currently acting Deputy Director for Industrial Affairs at the Ministry of National Development Planning, or BAPENAS, Mr. Yogi Harsudiono has coordinated national agenda projects anywhere from the revitalization of the manufacturing sector to export promotion to SME collaborations. Mas Yogi, we are happy to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Yuri, for your very warm introductions. And also thank you for Rabea, Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, and also Taiwan for having me in this event. I'm very honored to speak in this event, and I hope my experience working at the Bappenas of Indonesia, Ministry of National Development Planning, can be of valuable information for you and for the audience as well. I understand that the topics for discussion is very important and relevant topic, futures of work, and especially for the youth aspects. And as per the Rabea's and Yuri's introduction, it clears that Indonesia is a very big country and facing a lot of challenge. And here the government acknowledge a lot of challenge, and they already devised some strategic plans. I would like to share with you my presentations, and hopefully you can see it here. Okay. Here we go. So I would like to start my presentations on the fact that Indonesian is, along with many other countries in the world, in the midst of a pandemic of COVID-19. So to begin with, it's not an ideal situation to have to implement the plan that Indonesia has devised. As right now, a lot of challenges are being faced with a lot of countries, including Indonesia, especially for Indonesia, a country that big for Indonesia with 260 million people. The economic growth rate are on a very much threat. We are required to grow much faster in terms of the growth rate to catch up with the growth rate pre-pandemic COVID-19. However, these years we are projected to have a negative growth rate of almost 2%, and we need to catch up our growth in 2021, 22, 23, up to 2024 to increase up to 8% per annum, and that would be really much challenge. And not only on the economic growth aspects, in terms of the workforce and the unemployment itself, we need to work harder and devise some strategic plans in terms of how we can achieve the growth rate and absorb the employment that currently are a lot of people not working right now. So approximately, if we would like to decrease our unemployment workers, nominal unemployment workers, to the pre-pandemic level, we need to have growth of 8% of the Indonesian economy, and then also have those growth has to translate into workforce approximately 500,000 new workers per 1% economic growth. That is very much challenges, because in the normal situations, to put some context for us, 1% economic growth in Indonesia is only be able to absorb 200,000 to 300,000 new employments. However, because of the pre-pandemic COVID. If the Indonesian government would like to have a stable unemployment rate, we would like to increase those elasticity between economic growth and employment up to 500,000 per 1% of economic growth. It's also to put some other context that the global economic growth projections also not very much optimistic next years and going forward. However, depends on how fast the vaccines and everything. We hope that the economic growth can start kicks in by at least the first half or late first half next years. Well, unemployment, including for the future of work and employment in Indonesia, one of the key sectors, the primary sector that we would like to promote further and grow further is the manufacturing sector. However, in the next 2 or 3 years going forward, the Indonesian manufacturing sector is still on the recovery phase. A lot of countries is projected to recover the manufacturing sectors by mid next years. However, if certain case or scenario happens, it can be delayed up to 2024. In several sectors that Indonesia are currently monitoring, that it see that the global economic trend, especially in the manufacturing sectors, not recovery paths are very much different between subsectors. Some sectors are in the manufacturing sectors are projected to grow faster and recover earlier. However, other sectors might not as well have the equal growth rate and might be projected to have an later on a recovery. Those one sectors especially are on the textile industries. So the world post-COVID is going to be different. It's different because now people are a lot of are unemployed, decrease of your income as a result of slowing economy and slowing businesses, factories closing. But at the same time, this COVID also gives you an acceleration of technology and automation trends. This, I understand, will give a mix. There is a mixed opinions on this, whether it's going to be as a threat for unemployment, especially for the young people. However, I would say that the futures of work, especially for the young people, will be very much different than what we are understand right now in terms of what employment should be. In the digital economics, you might not work from office anymore, and then right now the trend of teleworking is definitely takes place, and I think what we've seen so far that the certain type of job will have a permanent impact in terms of the way they do and conduct working from home. Certain sectors like education sectors, financial and insurance service, company service, ICT, and real estate might have a higher percentage or higher trend of conducting work from home higher than the other sectors. Certain sectors might have still you need to go to the office every day, but based on the learnings and the experience that we have right now during the pandemic, then actually productivity of the workers and the office as well in aggregate can be maintained or even higher, even your employees are working from home. And once the companies and once the industry started to acknowledge those trends, I think the trend for telemarketing for certain subsectors will stay there and even growing going forward. So, as I mentioned earlier, that the Indonesian economy is so large, and then the challenge of the Indonesian labor market and employment market is also existed. Human capital has always been a long-standing issue in terms of the quality of educations that the Indonesian workers receive, and how they translate those educations into productivity. Indonesian workers and employees are not necessarily the best one, even in the regions. We are constantly scores lowers in terms of the education's indicators, and also in terms of the productivity. Indonesian workers might not be the most productive. However, we are recognizing those problems, and Indonesian government are actually coming up with several plan and strategy how to address those problems. And the future of it, I think, is going to be depends on how well the government of Indonesia is implementing those strategy, which I think right now is already on track. And in order for us to be able to achieve the visions that Indonesia has set out in 2045, of which the Indonesian target to be able to become already the 5th largest economy in the world and becoming high income country in 2036. So much the importance of the human capital and the quality of the people of Indonesia. Indonesian has the pillars, the 4 development pillars of Indonesia in 2045. We put that the human development and mastery of science and technology as the first development pillars that we are going to be addressing in terms of the policy. We are in setting out our vision in 2045, 100 years after the Indonesian independence. We are recognizing that there are multiple global megatrends that takes in place and going to be strengthened going forward. One of it is actually growing middle income class and changing demography landscape. If we look at the demographic structure of Indonesia, Indonesia are currently enjoying the demographic bonus, but it will only last until 2030 or 2031. So approximately we have 10 years going forward to implement, to coming up with strategy and then to implement those plans in order to maximize the bonus of demography that we are now enjoying. After 2030, the bonus will not be there anymore, and then the Indonesia will need to work harder. However, this next 10 years is going to be of utmost importance of the Indonesian government to coming up and implement those strategies to empower and to increase the quality of their workforce in order to for the Indonesian to be able to meet the challenge of the future. One of the key aspects to increase of the policy is to increase the quality of the technology and research and development in order for Indonesian workers and also the young people to be able to catch up and master the technology that's going to be flourish in the future. So these are the aspects that the Indonesian government thinks that needs to be strengthened for the Indonesian workers. The soft skill, combination of soft skill and hard skill. Soft skills, that problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, might not necessarily, so far, might not necessarily been taught that much or put more emphasis on during the educations of the Indonesian children. However, the Indonesian government has coming up with the adjustment of the Indonesian education curriculum to put more emphasis on the soft skill as well, so that this kind of soft skill can be utilized by the Indonesian employees, Indonesian workers, for them to be able to be more productive and rise up to the challenge of the futures. However, we think that the hard skill as well, the tacit knowledge that you gain from doing the hard works, it's one of the aspect that the Indonesian government has put a focus on the policy in terms of the vocational educations, in terms of the trainings of the workers, and in terms of how we address those problems. Okay. So last year's, the Indonesian government, in collaboration with the World Bank, has conducted a joint research to identify what are the occupations that are critical in terms of the quantity being supplied in Indonesian labor force and in terms of the demand of the industries itself. So these are the 35 occupations lists that are both in shortage in Indonesia, but at the same time, it is very strategic across the industrial sectors. Those 35 composes 35 critical occupation lists are actually composed of the 9 manager, 12 professionals, 8 technicians or associate professionals, 2 skilled agricultures, forestry, livestock, fishery workers, 2 craft related trade workers, and 2 plant and machine operators or assemblies. This information has been decided by the Ministry of Work Indonesia to be part of the labor market information system that is currently being developed by the Indonesian, because what we understand that those 35 critical occupation lists is going to be dynamic. Each year, the pictures, the supply and demand and the mismatch is going to be different, and the Indonesian youth that entering the labor force, entering the job market, by utilizing this labor market information system will be fully will be able to know exactly what kind of occupation that currently in demand or consistently in demand, so that they can adjust their targeting job searching strategy, or might as well be as an input for the educations sectors on what skills and knowledge that needs to be going to be developed in the education system. Okay, this to give you a context how far Indonesian are underrepresented or have a lower score in terms of the TIMSS math test and also on the PISA test score. Another context is that the Indonesian workers mostly are low skill across industry, agriculture, manufacture, and sector. These are the challenges that the Indonesian government, therefore we are trying to coming up a portfolio of policy, hoping that the policy can improve the productivity and increase the skills of the workers. Another aspect that the Indonesian government tried to address in increasing the quality of the Indonesian workforce and labor force, and as well preparing them for the future, is to implement the Industry 4.0 strategy. Industry 4.0 strategy might not necessarily all technology. It's not all about technology. It's actually about, and it's not all about automation as well. It's actually a strategy to develop the industry sector that actually addressing the old fundamental strategy that the Indonesian economy and government might not be able to address earlier. So by putting the Industry 4.0 strategy, we're actually putting the industrial policy to be a primary agenda of the government. And by putting the Industry 4.0 strategy, we are predicted that it's going to impact the Indonesian economy across 3 ways. The first one is being the economic growth. The second one is that we're interested in this occasion is on the job creations. And the third one is on the contribution of the Indonesian manufacturers. By our predictions, from implementing the Industry 4.0 strategy, we'll be able to create new employment of 10 million figures by 2030. So Indonesian medium-term development plan up to 2024 has already put the increasing the quality and competitiveness of human capital as one of the primary agenda. I understand for what Yuri asking us is to come up with what actually government's trying to do to address and to prepare for the future of work, especially for the youth. So in our medium-term development plan up to 2024, out of 7 national priority, we have 2 that actually addressing directly the problems that we are trying to solve. Which one is, well, the first one is being the economic growth, and the second one is to increase the quality and competitiveness of human capital. And in our medium-term development plan, we also have these 4 policy mainstreaming that we are trying to take this policy mainstreaming as a lenses that we are using in analyzing the policy and ensuring that the policy are ticking all the boxes that addressing the problem in these 4 areas, which are the genders issues, the sustainable development goals, the digital transformation, and the socio-cultural capital. So these 4 mainstreaming policy are omnipresent in all those 7 national priorities. Productivity and competitiveness are one of the key factors that the Indonesian government going to address in terms of how they are going to solve the employment and the workforce issues. So in terms of the what are exactly the policy that the government has enacted to promote the improvement of the quality of Indonesian workforce, we are implementing the super deduction incentive. Government regulations number 45 enacted last year in 2019 basically gives the incentive to the private sectors to jointly collaborate with the government in improving the quality of their workforce, which in return they will have these tax deductions in amount that is actually comparable with the one offered in the Southeast Asian regions. Hopefully, the obligations to improve the quality of the workforce will not only be borne by the government, but also going to be shared with the private sectors, which I think right now, the private sector is actually doing that, but without proper incentive. We hope that by implementing this incentive, the private sector will have a tangible benefit by improving their workforce, then actually can be spread out, not only conducted by the primary industries or large scale companies, but also to medium companies that actually in terms of the quantity is much more than the large companies. And the recent law on the omnibus law also addressing the issues of the labor workforce by giving us some relaxations on the flexibility on the strictness of the labor market. I think this is going to be subject to more discussions going forward. So what actually the Indonesian government strategy in terms of promoting youth development and empower the youth? Indonesian government has already taken into account and acknowledging the issue of youth development problems. We have several issues. However, the way that government approach the youth development policy, we try to approach it from 3 different layers. Because we think that these 3 layers are actually interrelated. Then and if you want to see significant changes, if you want to see a significant outputs in terms of the productivity of the youth, we think that the Indonesian government will need to address on 3 different layers, which are the individual empowerment of individual youth, and the second one is actually providing them with the life opportunity, and the third one is creating a self-actualization mechanism for them to be able to actualize themselves in the public settings. On the individual empowerment, we are talking about individual education and health. So you were talking about the policy on education attainment, participation in higher educations. On the health aspect, you're talking about how giving the youth a better health, how to create a system for the youth to be able to be more productive because they're healthier. So the issues of early smokers, early age pregnancy, crime victims are the issues that the government's already taking into account in terms of the policy they are implementing. And the second layers in terms of the life opportunity, we are talking about how to empower the youth for entrepreneurships, how to upskill and reskill them to prepare them for the workers in the private sectors or in the formal sectors. In terms of the self-actualization, the last layers, we are talking about the gender inequality and also leadership and social participation. In this aspect, we are talking about the stereotyping problem about genders and how how there is an uneven access between male and females, or between people's youth living in the city, youth living in the rural areas. Certain problems that are that unfortunately still present in Indonesia, such as the early age marriage, female youth participations, not only in higher education, also in workforce. These are the issues that the Indonesian are trying to solve. We already acknowledge these issues, and we hopefully implementing the strategy and policy that addressing these problems. So in aggregate, the youth can better prepare for the futures and be able to productive and rise to the challenge. So the government has this index called the Youth Development Index. We see this index is disaggregated into those three layers, and the achievement between 2015 2019 is actually quite significant for the index, especially on the economic opportunity. There's a quite jump on the increase of the sub-index. However, going forward, we would like to be, the Indonesian government would like to be more aggressive by putting higher target Youth Development Index in 2024, rising from 52 in 2019 up to 57 in 2024. So these are the strategic action plan for the youth entrepreneurship. We disaggregated this strategy into 5 different strategic plan. The first one is creating the training, being inspirational. How does the inspirations to become an entrepreneur as the first step for youth to become an entrepreneur? And the second is starting out the enterprise.
Mas Yogi, sorry, I would have to proceed. We would need to proceed to the next speaker. Could you please make your closing remarks now? Thank you.
Sure. In that case, I would go into the last slide, actually. So these are the aspects that our Indonesian government try to coming up with the policy in terms of providing them to be able to excel in the economic opportunities, both as a skilled worker and both are skilled entrepreneurs. So improvement of training curriculum, competency-based trainings, and facilitation of skill and to works are actually aspects that we're going to address to prepare the youth to become a skilled workers. Also, for being an entrepreneur, the government already prepares in different incentives in terms of the financial service and microcredit, entrepreneurship training and facilitation, and as well the market access and business climate to support startup development are the portfolio that the Indonesian government prepares and already implemented to prepare the youth as a skilled worker and entrepreneurs. I think, Yuri, that's my presentation. I am sorry if it's a bit longer than I am expected, but hopefully it gives the audience a clear pictures, the problems that the Indonesian government that already recognize, then the plan strategic directions going forward that the Indonesian government going to address in terms of futures of work, then policy for the youth. Thank you, Yuri.
Thank you very much, Mas Yogi. Yes, it's very unfortunate we had to cut you there, but we will try to see if we could share your slide or a summary of your presentation with our audience in case they're still interested in knowing more about the remainder of your Mas Yogi for a very comprehensive
live
talk
streaming is on
regarding the perspectives or regarding the approaches of government on the area of the future of youth. And as you mentioned, there is actually a lot of things going on right now, and there's actually a very comprehensive plan being laid out by the government, which takes into consideration the future opportunities for young people in this area. Now, to proceed with the next presenter, I would like to introduce him very briefly. Our next speaker is a researcher at the Center for Strategic and International Studies Department of Economics. CSIS is a think tank based in Jakarta, Indonesia. His interest in the intersection between economics and policy translates very well in his current projects on trade agreements and international cooperation, digital economy, disruptive technologies, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. He also wears the hat of a consultant for Indonesia's Ministries of National Development Planning, Trade, and international organizations like the ERIA, the International Labour Organization, and JICA. We are very excited to hear next from you, Mr. Dandi Refitrandi. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Yuri. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll like to share my screen then. Okay, is it working?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yuri, and also for CAST Japan, Social and Economic Governance Program, Asia, and also Taiwan Asia Exchange Program, and the committee for inviting me. First of all, I would like to have this moment to introduce briefly about CSIS, probably. So we are actually an independent think tank, which is, I think, our comparative advantage is actually our network, which spans from the industry, government, academia, trade union, and also international organizations. That's why we come up with this idea of bringing all these stakeholders together in a forum to talk about the employment issues and also share the latest research on labor issues in Indonesia Labor Policy Forum. So we would like to see ourselves as a representative of the unemployed people and also the soon to be the labor force, because of course they don't have any organization that speak for themselves. In addition, we also conveyed last year's CSIS Global Dialogue to showcase some of the most advanced technology frontier, which is we invite Sophia, as you may know, the most advanced AI robots in the world, to talk with us about AI and also the impact to the society. And we also have a very interesting and have a separate youth forum, which invite university students to discuss really about the technology and the future of jobs. This is also one of the promotional slide that I would like to make. This is one of our project with Asian Development Bank related to supporting technological transformation in Indonesia. This is not really related to the youth actually, but you can have a brief of background about how's the Indonesia actually adopt the latest technological transformation such as AI, machine learning, big data, and etc. It also spans from e-commerce, manufacturing, banking, and also gender issues. So yeah, I already give the link for the study, so you can check it out. So this is some topics that I would like to cover in this presentation. So this is a quote actually from Sophia, because we don't really have a guideline to how to quote a robot or an AI. So I'm just gonna give it here that robots are better in doing repetitive jobs and crunching number, but CEO, I mean humankind and teachers, you are still need feelings to your jobs. This is actually an answer of question whether whether robots and AI actually will take over our jobs, right? So this is from the AI itself. Okay, I think the technological change is not really uncommon phenomenon. So it's already happening. Some of the popular theories, such as skill bias technological change, unbundling theory by Richard Baldwin, and also Industrial Revolution 4.0, which introduced by World Economic Forum in 2016. Now we have the technological singularity, which means that it's basically telling the point whether we will have a sort of like a supercomputer that actually surpass our brain capacity. So that's very interesting. So related to the Industrial Revolution 4.0, I think this new wave of technology, for example, especially in manufacturing, related to AI, machine learning, big data, this is some notable technologies. This has already have an impact on our business model and even the nature of work in the business sectors. In the recent 2019 World Development Report, I think the study state that the equilibrium of the future of jobs relies on automation and also innovation. So I think this is the we need to emphasize this, because most of the narrative of industrial revolution is more negative, because it will displace humankind. But I think that should we concern? Yeah, probably, but we have to look it as an opportunity, because, for example, in the technology sector where people increasingly using smartphones or tablets, more jobs will be available for mobile apps developers or software engineers, which is the jobs that not really we think in the last 10 years or so. So the challenge is really how to equip this displaced workers and the younger generation by the required skills for the new jobs for the future. But I have to argue that it's quite hard to predict what kind of skills that really need in the future, because a study by the Institute for the Future explained that 65% of the students nowadays will work in jobs that do not exist yet. So yeah, it's pretty challenging, because as the technology intensity jobs arise, I think it is reasonable that one might think that, oh, more IT and computer related skills is the most important one. But we have also take a look at other skills such as social and behavioral skills, right? Social and behavioral skills such as teamwork, empathy. I think that there are also more important in the future. For example, complex problem solving and creativity. That is really what Sophia said, right? So it's not about crunching the number, but really how to communicate and also do the teamwork with other also men and also the robots. On the other hand, I think the high cognitive skills alone will be insufficient. So what's about Indonesia right now? So I have to argue that the technological adoption in Indonesia is still quite early stage, because as you can see, this is a projection by McKinsey, said that probably only 10 to 15% of the workers that will be displaced by the robotization. So yeah, if you can see the Singapore, Korea, Japan is like out there, higher up there. So this is because of one of the obstacles is the country readiness itself. For example, we don't really have the infrastructure ready, and then there will be an inequality in terms of technological adoption itself. That's why, based on one of the statistics, it said that the digital or country readiness of digital adoption in Indonesia is still nascent. So I would like to proceed to the youth and labor market in Indonesia. I think Mas Yogi already explained several key statistics, but I want to explain this is quite interesting survey that we conduct in 2017, which is related to millennial. Well, the profile is we survey the youth between 17 to 29 years old. And then we capture several perceptions regarding the globalization, and also their concerns, and also their optimist or pessimistic view related to government. And I think it's pretty alarming, because they tend to be more or less optimistic compared with the non-millennial one. They have a sort of negative perception on foreign firm, on workers, compared to the non-millennial. And they also think that globalization is bad for the country. And then, of course, the social media is their primary source of information. So, yeah, I want to start to look at the labor market, like to know who is really the millennial is. So youth in Indonesia's labor force, I think we have a vast potential. They stay longer in education. They're more likely to participate in the labor force. They have higher digital literacy. But the question is whether these statistics are actually translated into a more productive or a more productive young generation? That's actually a different questions, because we can see from the study conducted by Pritchett in 2016 say that Indonesia's tertiary level graduates have a quite similar level of competency with the less than upper secondary graduates in Denmark. So I think this is translated to staying in longer in education system. It doesn't really correlate it with the competency itself. So yeah, this is only the confirmation of several statements that I have earlier. We can see that the informal sector is still growing for the young generation. You can see for 15 to 24 years old, there's a increasing trend. Average hourly wage, we're still in a growth, so it's good. I think that for the unemployment rate for the age of 20 to 24, we have the increasing trend in the several years. So yeah, there's probably the trend of the educated unemployment. So and the last one is the underemployment, which is decreasing. I think it's a good news for the young generation. So I also want to revert to one of the study that want to show the relation between routine and manual jobs and wages in Indonesia. That's it's from Wicaksono and Mangunsong in 2019. They're showing actually if your job really about the manual and routine, for example, require predictable physical work such as sewing machine operator or assembly line worker, you're more likely to have less income than the others. So this is, I think, the number two group here. I think this is the most the workers that is most prone to technology and also automation. I think we also lack of data regarding the demand side of the labor market. So I have to take a look of one of our study. Actually, we have a survey for 500 companies regarding their utilization of Industrial Revolution 4.0 technologies such as AI, machine learning, big data, and also robotization. And we found that only 6% of them that identified as an advanced firm. So it's pretty small in terms of number, right? And most of them still in the basic manufacturing firms, which is 64%. The most interesting part, I think, the robotics came the highest as a utilization degree. They have like 27% of the utilization from our firm that we surveyed. Large firms and electronics are actually the most firms that and sectors that have the highest awareness related to technology and Industry 4.0. And most of the firms actually obtain their information in-house and also from their peers in the industry. So yeah, this is okay. This is about the industrial robots in Indonesia. As you can see, Indonesia is pretty small regarding the utilization of robots. This is actually a data from International Federation of Robotics 2018. But if you can see the magnitude of change in the last 10 years, it's like 20 times. So I think it's pretty promising that and we can predict that the utilization of robotization will increase in Indonesia in more years in the future. And the sector that they use robots at most actually automotive sectors and also plastic and chemical products. Okay, some policy responses. I think it's really good that Mas Yogi already explained from the perspective of Indonesian policy, but I like to emphasize we have to really look at the others, also the other countries' experience. As for example, for early education and K-12 intervention, I think the curriculum should focus on building strong foundation skills such as analytics, literacy, numeracy, creativity. I think this is the phase that gives us the highest return on education, right? So we might want to take a look to, I think, Vietnam, which is quite successful in terms of making the education system really inclusive. So, and also I think it's important to improve the teachers' quality by making them more relevant, also especially related to technology and digital knowledge. And for the technical and vocational education and training, probably we can see from the European countries, for example, Switzerland, because according to OECD 2018, the technical and vocational education is actually more inclusive since it's improved earnings for the marginalized labor force, such as women and youth. Therefore, I think the program could play a significant role to increase employability and also reduce poverty and inequality. And for the higher education, I think this is really need to big revolution because it once represented a secure pathway to high skill, high jobs. So if you have your degree, then you will get paid well, right? However, recent trends that the university's outcome is not really improving because there is a growing rate of skill mismatch, both in vertical and horizontal. I think the really important message here is to have more closer approach with the business sectors, and so we will have the curriculum that is more adaptive to answer the fast changing future skills, right? And I think the lastly, university should also capture the demand for lifelong learning, for example, using recent technology such as massive open online courses, for example. This is one of the I think promising program from Indonesia, which is the pre-employment card program. If you know that the Singapore has this sort of like the same program, which is Skills Future. So this program actually want to mimic the program in Singapore. This is like when the government give you a platform to have a training, and then they give you a credit so you can have trainings and courses provided by the private or public institutions. So, but I think because of the pandemic, that there is a change or shift in the targeted group because they want to focusing on the impacted workers because of the COVID and unemployment and also SMEs. The next program that I think it's pretty promising too is the Digital Talent Scholarship Program by the Minister of Communication and Information. It's actually a scholarship, competitive, so you have to be selected and you have to register first, aiming for 60,000 participants, and also trying to improve their digital and technological skills, which is we know that Indonesia really lack of digital talent. You can see the programs ranging from the fresh graduate and to the entrepreneurship program. The program actually partnering up with the Gojek, Tokopedia, and Google Indonesia. So the question may be, okay, so public or private? I think both. I mean, those two institutions should collaborate to really have these institutions and the real market experience blend together, right? So the vocational school businesses should improve the link and match. We have Balai Latihan Kerja, which is training that located in the, I think, all provinces and districts that need to be revitalized and to make it more relevant and demand oriented, and probably how to link it to the local needs. University and private sectors also started to have this collaboration. Probably you know Bukalapak and Tokopedia are one of several our unicorns already have partnership with ITB and also University of Indonesia, and also we have the Apple Academy in with Binus University. I think this is really the trend of tomorrow's how how the government of Indonesia should collaborate with the private sectors to really improve their labor force quality. And also we have to know that Indonesia have this education technological boom. I think it's also driven by the COVID, because we have the emerging number of private training providers, but the question is whether our internet infrastructure is enough. This is the COVID. This is actually a bonus slide. The short term and the long term that I really want to emphasize, because it's really related how COVID actually quote unquote force the for example, in education and learning, they force both students and teachers to really adapt instantly to online learning, right? So they're not come prepared, right? So for the young workers also, they are, I think, more vulnerable to lay off if we have economic crisis, because most of them are in the informal sector, and they're comparably at cheaper options. In the long term, how this pandemic and the probability of crisis is this is increasing. So if there is a higher risk of future shock or pandemic, it might lead to a faster robotization, right? It will be cheaper to have containment policy with the robots in your firm, for example. So and the long-term issues also, I noted, might be a soaring income inequality as a consequences of a different educational outcome that we have in the short term. So the conclusion, I want to close my presentation to say that yes, youth is more vulnerable to shock. Whether we talk about technology and also the COVID. So the key question, the key word actually is the adaptability. So how to invest in learning new skill set and be agile to adapt to new technology. But you have to also note that technology is just a tool. So the mindset of itself is, I think, the more important. For example, how you change the mindset of people that already 40 years old, 50 years old, that already have that kind of mindset, and then you want to change it to be more lifelong learning, and then still update it with the more relevant skills. I think that's the more important. Of course, bring the business sector closer to the education institutions and the skill formation system in the country. Also, digital literacy, and I want to emphasize that Indonesia needs to remove some of the barriers of, I think, in education system. For example, for indirect investment in education sectors, and also flow of high skilled workers, because I think Indonesia one of the most restricted education sector in the world, because we don't really allow foreign professors in having a tenure job, for example, in our university. And the last but not least is actually related to the data, because the data regarding the youth-related data, occupational database data, demand side of the labor market are actually very hard to get, because we don't have that kind of survey yet. That's why it's very hard to for Indonesia to really think and see what kind of future skills that need in the labor market. I think that's also need to be improved in the future. I think that should be all for me. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mas Dandy, for sharing your slides and your paper. It's very interesting, because you kind of like hinted on something that I mentioned at the very beginning, when I mentioned that young people now are staying longer in schools or in education, but it's not actually how long people stay, but it's more on the quality and the amount of the quality of the education that they're getting. It's also important to highlight what you mentioned, something about like now there's this interplay of government with the private sector and academia, or with education, making it more cohesive. The approach in terms of coming up with solutions for young people and preparing them for a future is more cohesive and holistic. Right. So thank you very much, Mas Dandy, for that. Now we will proceed with our last speaker for today, who is definitely not the least. The last speaker for today's session is an economist researcher with the Australia-Indonesia Partnership for Economic Development, or Prospera. His works revolve around trade, technology, jobs in Southeast Asia, and the global value chain's impact to employment. Having worked previously for the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, ERA, in Nielsen, Indonesia, he finds himself actively involved with government on an advising capacity on trade and industrial policy-related issues. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Samuel Nurasamsu.
Thank you, Yuri, and thank you, Rabia, and thank you, KS and TAEF for the opportunity. So first, before I start, I want to make a disclaimer first. So what I'm going to present today is not a Prosperous point of view. It's my view as a researcher, and also, so my position is not on the private sector. Probably I'm kind of like similar with Dandi, but my line of work actually allows me to understand and also converse with the private sector, especially in the manufacturing industries. So let me share my presentation. So yeah, so the context is, so I'm going to start for the automation and labor in general. So I think the most contentious problem in this automation is there's a labor destroying and augmenting effect. So that means that some occupations will be lost, some occupations will appear, and some workers are actually left behind. So there are kind of like a discussion about the man versus machine, where man will be replaced by machine and so forth. New jobs emerge, some old jobs lost, and also there are changing skills relevancies and also increasing required skill sets even in the existing jobs. And however, this effect is disproportionate. The effect is depends on the age group, gender, job type, industry or sector type, and also the skill set. This is studied by Frey and Osborne in 2017, and as we can see that, so they ranked job, kind of like a universal rank, on which jobs that can be easily automatable and also which jobs that are not prone to automation. And we can see that the jobs that are not prone to automation is actually the jobs that are requiring a non-routine task and also interpersonal skills and more complex and specific tasks, while jobs that are more susceptible is actually routine jobs, routine tasks, and also, yeah, the task that can be automated, that is easily programmed by a robot. So this list is not, wants to say that it's not about the skills, it's not about the low skills, it's not about the high skills, but even the high skills, as long as they do routine tasks, they can be easily replaced. So that's the point. And we can see that this is our study, Prospera study and Alphabet in 2019. We can see that the non-routine physical tasks, non-routine interpersonal and technological tasks increased significantly from 2015. So the type of task performed by Indonesian workers in 2015 is now more into non-routine tasks and technological tasks, while the routine and routine interpersonal is getting replaced. So 5.5 additional hours spent on more complex tasks, actually. And the effect is disproportionate, as I said before. Formal workers, high-skilled workers, and younger age group receive more opportunity due to task changes. So this graph is actually median annual growth in real income by select characteristics in 2007, 2014. And this is applied to people that the job is prone to automation and such. And we can see that first we look at the right side, workers group, age group. The one that get more benefit is the workers between age lower than 30, meaning the younger group of people, and also 30-49. And the least gain from this automation is actually elder workers, 50 or above. And we can see that this is also the high-skilled workers receive more benefit and low-skilled workers receive least benefit. And formal workers too, they also receive more benefit. But men and women in Indonesia doesn't really differentiate between this benefit. However, if you see other studies actually evidence closer wage gap, especially in the developed countries between men and women due to task change, because the perception is the routine task is usually physical where men have comparative advantage, and now it's more non-routine and less physical, and that's where women have more comparative advantage, or probably the same. So that's why the closer wage gap happened. Several studies shows that. And I want to continue to the industry part. So I think the concern in Indonesia is whether in Indonesia the automation effect is labor enhancing or is it labor destroying? So if I want to summarize several research and also from several reports, the net magnitude of automation in Indonesia is actually labor enhancing. What does that mean? Meaning that if the companies, if the industries automate their work, they actually create more jobs rather than destroying more jobs. Why? Because the productivity is still low. We are not in the technology frontier, and every increase in the automation, in the technology adoption, brings more output quality, but it's not on the point of efficiency, on the labor efficiency. It's more about the increasing output capacity, increasing output quality, and that's why they are hiring more workers. Even though, on one caveat, the workers' composition will be different. Probably the routine tasks will be, the occupations that use more routine tasks will be less hired rather than the otherwise around. And the evidence is especially strong in the manufacturing sector. So this is the McKinsey report. So actually McKinsey report shows this net impact of automation, and they kind of like predict how much employment that will be increasing in the 2030 given this automation. And they kind of like predict that all sectors actually have an increasing in employment effect, except transportation. But we can see that the composition will be different. So agriculture will be less demanded, and also, but the accommodation and food services will be increasing in the near future. So it's disproportionate once again, and it's kind of like bringing different story altogether. While the growth is most on the services, non-routine tasks, and interpersonal skills. And we can see from this graph is actually Indonesia. This is kind of like a contribution of economic growth between countries. This is taken from Asian Productivity Outlook Report 2018. And TFP. So TFP is kind of like indicators that are not captured from capital and labor as a contribution of economic growth. So TFP can cover anything, but mostly it's on the technology side. And as we see that Indonesia only has 1% TFP contribution to economic growth. And this is much less than other countries, other peer countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, and so on. And we can say that this low technology level in Indonesia and low technology absorption is holding back Indonesia's growth potential since forever. And also that's why the point is like, if we want to increase our technology, then just do it. Just increase the technology, and the workers will actually, the employment will actually still increasing. So on the contrary, on the developed countries where the workers will be gone, it's replaced by machine. Well, indeed, there are some effects, but the increase in the employment is actually offset the labor loss. And next, I move into the manufacturing side. On the manufacturing side, as I said before, Indonesian manufacturers are not in the technology frontier. automation is driven by rising demand, meaning that we still have a long way to adopt new technologies. Also, plenty of room to expand our industries. As I said before, that this adoption of new technologies is not because of the efficiency of labor and so forth, but it's more into like, I want to make better cars, better vehicles, that I need to import new technologies. That's why I need to hire more laborers in the set of technology, in the set of skills, so I can operate this machine. And therefore, automation of manufacturing sectors will be labor enhancing, creating more demand for labor along with the increase in productivity, offsetting labor destroying effect. And also it depends on the type of industries. And I think the most important point too is like our main industry will not likely affected in the future. Some sectors that are capable to automate already do that actually, like vehicle manufacturers. They do, so if you see like Toyota and Honda, they already did some kind of like high-tech technology, even more into kind of like electricity. They already did their job in the automation. So they already start their automation since long ago. So my guess is we're still far away from this technology frontier. So don't be overly afraid of automation, because we still need to improve our productivity and jobs will be increasing and overall. So I think the kind of like the scary part of automation is still kind of far away in Indonesia. However, we still need to prepare for changing skill requirements. Why? Because, for example, as the evidence in the industry and the manufacturing industries, the change in production workers is actually much lower than the increase in non-production workers, meaning they are changing labor composition. So this is my study with this is our study with my colleague at area, with Dr. Ha and Dr. Shrestha. So we create some kind of like indicator of technology exposure. So because our technology is kind of low, we create some kind of indicators that explains whether the companies, the firms actually adopt new technology or not based on their inputs. And we can see that the technology exposure is significantly increasing over a decade. And this exposure is actually comes from China's industries. China's industries giving us more technology than ever before in the last decade. And we can see that this motor vehicle, chemical products, electrical machines is actually already start to automate since long ago, and their technology exposure is already very high. And we did some estimation after that, and we showed that both production and non-production workers in manufacturing are increasing if technology exposure increases, especially in recent period. So on the left side, this is the changes in production workers, percentage changes for every 1% increase of technology exposure. So in the first period, 2000-2004, the effect may be negative, but on the later period, in the 2005, 2008, and 2009, 2013, the effect is increasing, meaning that technological exposure for manufacturing firms in recent years actually create more labor opportunity for production workers. While in the right-hand side, this is for the non-production workers. So every 1% increase in non-production in technology exposure actually consistently create a labor opportunity for non-production workers. But
Excuse
then,
me.
Yep.
Right. Could you please make your closing now?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so actually this is kind of fast. The enhancing effect for non-production workers are higher than production workers. Of course, that's why there's kind of like shifting in the composition of labor. And the youth is, okay, actually, this is kind of like a figure of the optimism of youth facing the automation. And Indonesia is actually pretty optimistic in this case. We are the top 3 of the most confident youths in the world in facing automation. However, as Dandi said, and Mas Yogi has said, it is probably the reason why, because the confidence is probably strengthened because youth receive more benefits, but our skills is really low, and this is very important. This is my perception on the several FGDs, that basic skills are very important to create a trainable workers, and we are very lacking on that. Indonesian youth are very lacking on that, on basic skills like mathematics, critical thinking, literacy, and communication skills. And also, this is kind of like a figure that from the IFLS, we see that the simple division and subtraction problem, only 17.5% is the people surveyed that can answer this question. And this is like from 7 to 28. So there's a big issue on the basic education that creates more trainable workers. And policy recommendations, I think it is the same as done this presentation, increasing basic education quality in schools, delivering high quality vocational, removing investment restrictions, and improving coordination and administration, supporting female workers, and Indonesian social protection policies. All right, thank you. That's all of my presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Mas Sam, for that. It's very interesting because you and Mas Danny also have very similar opinions regarding this sector. It's also very nice to see that, well, I'm not sure if it's nice, but the experience of Indonesia is in a way very similar with a lot of countries within Southeast Asia. The biggest problem I think that the region is seeing is that we do have a lot of young people, fairly to highly educated, but then there's a mismatch of skills where the opportunities are arising. And so it's no longer really a problem of whether we have educated young laborers or young workers. It's more about whether the skill sets that people have is actually appropriate or suitable for the opportunities that are available. Anyway, so it's been a good 3 presentation. By now, we will see if we can answer some of the questions that were raised both in the chat box and also the ones that were sent in advance, but let's try to answer the ones that were sent first. So we'll go one by one first and then ask you to respond accordingly. And then after that, we will also be answering general questions for all 3 of you to answer. We'll see whoever feels like answering or responding to those. There's a question here specifically for Mas Sam. So what are the vital skills needed in business and industry to better prepare Indonesia's youth? How do competencies in technology factor in terms of improving opportunities or chances of people from the rural areas? I guess it's more specific for people in far-flung areas in finding opportunities for work.
Okay, so I think that's a very interesting question because it can be noted into a broad cases in the rural, because every region in Indonesia is different in terms of development. But I think the most important skills is coming from vocationals, like the use of more recent technology, because in rural areas it's either kind of like in the industry side or the more into agriculture, and we are kind of like lacking in that. So there's a lack in engineers in operating the machines. Also in the agricultures, we are still kind of like lacking in that. So technical skills is pretty important in operating the new technology. And as I said before, I think the most important skills is also the basic educations that we are severely lacking, especially in the rural in part of Indonesia. We thought that we know that in the future the skills requirement will be fastly changing, and if we cannot learn these new skills quicker, we will be losing out in the competition. And I think like critical thinking, cognitive skills, this is like kind of like the basic requirement that is most vital in the future.
Thank you very much, Mas. Then I would like to ask Mas Dandy for this one specific question as well. One of the participants is asking, based on BPS data, I guess you're familiar with this one. But 50% of workers in Indonesia are underqualified. I'm not really sure if this is accurate, but what current initiatives, government-led or otherwise, are in place to address the problem of underqualification?
Hello. Um, I think
I
that,
can be done.
okay, so there's a technical problem from the Yuri side, right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Should
but I
we?
think you can answer, Dandy.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Thank you very much. For the questions. Yeah. So I think Samuel also already mentioned regarding our lack of qualified workers in Indonesia. I think because of two things. The first one is because we have, of course, we lack of basic education skills, but also we have a high degree of mismatch in the labor market. So you are trained as a something else, but your education is actually different than your job right now. And the third one, I think it's because of the problem in terms of the lack of incentives for the firms to actually conduct trainings and development for its workers. There are actually several programs that already in place. I think Mas Yogi already explained it quite a lot, but I would like to tell you again. For example, the triple skilling, for example, skilling, upskilling, and reskilling program, which is conducted by the Ministry of Workforce, already in place right now. And secondly, I think last year the government already announced the super deduction tax for the firm that have training and research in development. I think apart from those programs, I already explained several things such as the digital scholarship program and also pre-employment card program.
Oh, thank you, Dandy. Yuri, are you back? Oh, sorry. I have another question from Rabea here since Yuri is a bit frozen, so I will take over the moderation from here. So, Rabea says that the challenges appear to be similar in the ASEAN region. Are there initiatives in the ASEAN to join forces to revamp education, to exchange policies on vocational training, for example? Um, would I think since Mas Yogi has not yet answered this question, I would like to direct this question to him on the similarities of policies between Indonesia and its ASEAN neighbors. Mas Yogi?
Thank you, Chris. Well, I'm not an education expert, but I've heard that in terms of the collaborations between the Asian governments, especially in the education sectors, and each year they have these Asian ministers of education's meetings. That's one. I think there's a formal coordination forums between Minister of Education within the Southeast Asian regions. That's the first. And the second would be, what I know is that the current curriculum that the Indonesian government is developing or that already in place is actually, they are, before they're enacted as formal curriculum, they are going through the several process whereby one of those process actually comparisons between the curriculums that the Indonesian government is trying to make and with the others curriculum in the Asian regions that already implemented. So yes, there is already a mechanism for the education sector to cope with in dealing with the challenges within the space.
Oh, good to know. Good to know that Indonesia is on track with its educational policies. So I'll turn back the microphone now to our original moderator, Yuri.
I'm so sorry, guys. It's just a bit of technical difficulty. Who they? Was it just Mas Yogi who answered the question?
Yes, so we can ask a general question now.
Okay, right. That's right. Okay. So we've been getting a lot of questions also on the YouTube chat box, but I guess I will also just tie the questions because some of them are also within the same vein. Like for example, we have two questions here. Like with Indonesia's being both culturally and religiously diverse, how are strides in development being upheld without undermining ethical standards across cultural groups? gender and faith in the country. And I guess similar to this or connected to this would be the question about the evolving role of women in a rapidly advancing Indonesian employment landscape. So I guess that question first, I would like to ask on Mr. Mas Sam to be the first one to answer that question.
All right, thank you. I think this is the first one is kind of like a difficult question because culturally, I don't know whether. So the truth is, I don't know whether this kind of like wave will be impact in culturally or not. But I think there might be some changes that in the cultural issues that we need to adopt. Specifically, probably I imagine it's more on the family cultures and issues where, and this is also related to gender, where women actually can perform more jobs, more tasks in these new waves of automation and also industries because we have kind of like closer comparative advantage now, and probably the requirement now will be like female have the same position in the man in the working culture, and sometimes it's just culturally in Indonesia. I know that it's still difficult to have that kind of like positions, and also in terms of gender and the female empowerment, we also know that especially in rural area that female workers actually have a lower education level, and this is where the point that we need to boost in terms of education so that the female labor participation can be increased in the future.
And Mas Yogi? The same question.
Yep. I think on addressing those questions, the Indonesian government has already acknowledged the cultures, social cultures issues as well the genders issues, and we already actually put it as the policy objectives and a policy mainstreaming within our existing medium-term national development plan. So it is already put in place by the government in terms of the legal basis on that and the policy advocation as well. However, we are fully realized that the implementations on the ground level policies might not be up to our objectives. But in terms of the policy objectives and policy prioritizations, it is already put in place in our strategic policy documents on both social cultures and the genders issues.
Now Yuri is frozen again, so I'd like Dandy to continue, please.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So regarding the cultural issues, I think it can be seen as both ways. I mean, as strength and also weakness. As I think the key of the multicultural mindset is actually how you see yourself in the different picture of other people, right? So it's about the level of how can you tolerate people with a different culture, different ethnicity, different religions, and etc. I think this is especially important for the younger generations. But as I explained in my slides, the perception regarding the globalization is pretty negative. So I think this is quite a challenge to change the mindset of the young generation. As Matyoki said that I think Indonesia already have the cultural thinking sort of revolution program in place, but of course the implementation is still there's a question about the implementation. But I think the real challenge is whether these differences can give a negative impact of economic stability if there is a sort of like a political unrest happening. So for the gender issues, I think Indonesia have an relatively increasing trend of women's labor participation in several years in the labor market, although the growth is quite relatively low. But I think as most literature's findings, the higher participation, we should push this women's participations because The higher the participation rate might contribute to a greater economic growth because, for example, one of the study actually said that the women's entrepreneurs are actually seen as more reliable than the men's because they have a financial and credit payments and lower NPL, for example. So I think, in my opinion, the most challenging part is actually the cultural issues regarding this gender. So there's some cultural constraint that you might restrict the girls and the women that going into education system and also labor market. Therefore, I think to improve this, we need to have girls and women more education access and also literacy. I think that's my questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. Then we also have two questions, but I'll just squeeze into one. And it's inching closer to the fear of the dystopian future. We've mentioned here in our talk about robotization, about automation, and there's the concern that more and more workers in the future would be losing their jobs to machines. So how do we prevent technological shifts and increasing globalization from disrupting Indonesia's healthy labor sector, and also more specifically in the sectors of agriculture and maritime sectors, because as we know, Indonesia heavily relies on agriculture and fishing. Is there a way to reconcile the use of new technology and AI without endangering these vital sectors and protecting the opportunity for the work of these people? Yes. That's. I guess I'll ask first, Mass Samuel again.
Yeah. So I think one point that we need to make is like this adoption of new technology is not simple. So even for the companies, it's pretty difficult to adopt new technology. Although it's probably right now it's fast, but in some sectors actually the automation is kind of like lagging. Like for example, like probably 3D printers is not on the commercial use yet. I mean, on the large manufacturing. So we cannot really make like from this design and suddenly into goods. It's not on that step yet. But I understand the concern is like, for example, in agriculture and maritime, probably we can use. We already use in agriculture. We already use drones to see the fields and also pouring out the pesticide and so on. So I think that one is pretty. Okay, so I think that one is pretty important. But again, this is a kind of like a long process, and we've been through this. I mean, the world has been through this since like industrial age, like people adopting new machines in the textiles, and now it's more into technology in the internet and so on. So what we need to prepare still is the same, is the basic education. Basic education is important, and also the reskilling and upskilling to prevent the loss, to prevent the loss of employment to be impacting the workers in the future. And also the most important point is social protections to capture the workers that could be laid off in the future because of this changing in the technology. And I think the government already has a good initiatives with Prakerja and such, and we still need to improve on that.
All right. Mas Yogi, please.
Thank you, Yuri. I think it's down to several points. I think it can be boiled into one sentence. It's actually about adaptations. Eventually, every aspect of people's life need to adapt to the changing technology, be it on the low-level skills of workers up to the higher skills of workers. Then, if it is about adaptation, it actually depends on how are you willing to do that and how are you well equipped to do it. So that's actually the policy of the government. For people that actually not be able to do it, they're going to be facilitated for them to be able to adapt. Because as Sam said in his presentation, as well as Dandy, technology implementation in Indonesia is very nascent. It's very young. It's not yet arrived at this inflection points whatsoever. It's not there. So any technological introduction will actually, in aggregate, will be productivity enhancing. So if it is a farmers, workers on all level, it's going to be helping them. So long as they are willing to learn how to do it, and that's actually the role of government, to facilitate them to be able to adapt to the new technology.
So I think this sort of
Live streaming is on.
Just go.
okay. I think this structural change, you can say it, from the primary sectors to tertiary sectors is actually inevitable because this phenomenon is not only happening in Indonesia, right? So it's happening in other countries as well. So the key is to have a smooth transition, which consists of two parts. The first one is how to improve their skills, make it more relevant in nowadays skills. And also make the labor force more closer to the business sectors. And the second one, as the government push the labor works and workers to shift to the new skills set, I think a good social security program is very important to give them a sense of security. And I also want to emphasize that the utilization of technology, as already said by Samuel and Mas Yogi, also such as, for example, AI and machine learning, might be therefore good in agriculture and maritime sector. For example, how to count land for farm using remote sensing, and how to count, for example, overfishing. Hopefully, this technology actually can contribute to increasing level or the degree of Indonesia agriculture and maritime sector sustainability in the future. I think that's my answer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for all the answers from our speakers. I understand that we are very much on overtime right now, but so all the remaining questions that were not raised, we'll just share with our audience, maybe your contact details, so you would have the opportunity to raise your questions directly to our speakers. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Chris Perez to do the quick summary for us, and she will be followed by Dr. Alan Haoyang for the institutional close from both CAS and TAEF. Now, Chris.
Thank you, Yuri. So we've just learned that Indonesia is one of the fastest growing economies in ASEAN and is currently in a position to take advantage of its demographic dividends. But similar to the rest of the world, the country is struggling economically to deal with a pandemic, and the demographic bonus needs to be translated into actual economic gains. But I would like to share two key takeaways from the entire webinar. First, we shouldn't be afraid of automation. Automation in Indonesia specifically is still labor enhancing from Sam's presentation, and that it creates more demand for labor, and it actually tries to increase productivity. It also depends on the industry where automation is applied. However, this impact is disproportionate. So you can see that this automation and digitalization in Indonesia can be taken advantage of if you are a formal worker, if you are highly skilled, and if you are young. So these are the groups that are receiving more opportunity due to these task changes that we are experiencing right now. So routine tasks are being replaced by complex tasks. So this is where human development and investment in human capital comes in. So we've seen from the presentations from Mas Yogi and from Mas Dandy that investment in human development and investment in increasing human productivity is of utmost importance. So we are seeing changing skill requirements that need corresponding changes in policy. So this means more investment in education, more investment in skills, meaning adjusting skills, adapting to technology, increasing competences in technology, but also not forgetting to invest in soft skills, such as critical thinking and creativity. If we are able to combine those goals, And if we are able to put in these policies in place, I think the future of work in Indonesia for its youth is onto a brighter tomorrow. So that would be my summary for the entire webinar. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our speakers and give the floor back to Yuri.
Actually, thank you very much, Chris, for those very fine points that you mentioned. Now, you've heard in the beginning from our partner in CAS, Ms. Rabea Brower was able to introduce the program. Now I'd like to invite to the floor the other partner, other half of this partnership, this TAEF, Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation, and its Executive Director, Dr. Alan Hao Yang, will be sharing his closing remarks on today's activity, today's session. Dr. Yang.
Good morning, my friend and colleague in CAS, and selamat pagi, my friend in Indonesia. It is my pleasure to attend this webinar, very meaningful webinar. We all know that the President Jokowi of Indonesia especially emphasized on the talent training and talent cultivation in the forthcoming years in his second term administration. So it is in particularly important to let us, both TAEF and also CAS, to explore and also to engage the stakeholder in Indonesia. So I personally benefit a lot from our presentation today. Pak Yuki, Pak Danny, and also Mr. Samuel for the wonderful presentation. Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation is a policy think tank working on the promotion of Taiwan's new southbound policy. And also we try to extend variety of the partnership through collaboration and also through joint effort, working on some cutting edge issues and also in order to contribute to the regional integration process in Southeast Asia and in South Asia and also in the broader sense of the Indo-Pacific area. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank our colleague, our partner, CAS, for the wonderful support and also the leading effort to realize this joint program. We have done the country profile report of Taiwan and also invite a few experts and also government representatives to share their insight on how the government and public sector can facilitate the future of work for the younger generation, for the youth generation. And also we learn from the civil society representative and also the scholar on what kind of challenges and also what kind of obstacle among the young fellows that encountered. And today we are pleased to hear and also learn from our Indonesian counterparts and also our presenter for sharing with us the opportunity and also the challenge, especially in terms of the digital capacity in the youth empowerment for the future of work. I think from the perspective of TAEF and also from Taiwan, as our government and also our society is fully promoting to establish solid tie with our friend in Southeast Asia, we will be more than happy to collaborate with each of you in the forthcoming future. And this year, we are pleased to conduct a national survey on Taiwan's national image and also the image of Taiwan's business in Indonesia. And we are about to release that survey data. And I think for the forthcoming future, our government will continue to play a very important role to facilitate any potential collaboration tie with our friend in Indonesia and also in Southeast Asia. And I do look forward to listening and also learning from you in the forthcoming future and also to introduce more national and country profile in other Southeast Asia countries and to make a comparative study. And I do believe that our colleague in CAS will be also pleased and pleasant to share the joint effort to our friends in the region. So finally, I would like to thank you all for the kind support and also the wonderful organization of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, everyone. Well, that brings us to the very end of our activity. I really apologize for overextending, but it was really a very fruitful sharing on the part of our speakers again. So, Mas Yogi, Mas Dandy, Mas Samuel, thank you very much to our partners in CAS, our friends in TAEF, and to all of you viewers for joining us and having patience and staying throughout the whole extent of this activity. Just before we go, I just wanted to remind you that we will be having our next session in January for the future of work for Asian youth, focusing now on Malaysia. And our last session after that would be on Vietnam. So please join us again next time for another session of this webinar series. Have a great day, everyone, and be safe. Thank you.
Sampai jumpa.
Thank you. Sampai jumpa.
Thank you, Mr. Alan.